of her family. She's critical of many cultures and traditions, which she tries to explain in certain ways to a foreign audience. All of this is aimed not at her own society, but at the Westerners, and she's trying to explain why she did what she did, why she violated cultural norms. Some would also argue broken culturally backed laws, unwritten laws, by engaging in this driving campaign that landed her in jail for a few days. At the same time, it is very clear that she knows the effect, the explosive effect this narrative will have on the society, and not necessarily in a good way. We know that from the way she discusses her campaign. She acknowledges that these events took place at the height of the Arab Spring, when the entire society was particularly sensitive to the developments that were taking place across the Arab world. There was a great deal of concern about the possibility of a violent uprising in Saudi Arabia that would bring down the monarchy and that could harm the existing social institutions. There was a concern about the coming to power of Muslim Brotherhood or of violent jihadist groups, such as the one that attempted to take over the Grand Mosque in the 1970s. And on the one hand, there was support for her effort, because even at that point in time, many families were affected by women's inability to drive, as she explains, economically, socially, on many different levels. It was negative for the entire society. But at the same time, a lot of the women felt apprehensive about the way she was approaching that topic. And while there was a great deal of support, a lot of that support was from very pro-Western women who were socially active in the social media, and or who already who were supporters of the type of activism that brought about the Arab Spring. But there were also many members of the society who were not, and who considered that type of activism highly problematic. So Manal became a very controversial figure. She gained a lot of attention and support in the West. She ended up getting a lot of invitations to public speeches, and she essentially endangered her own job, because she was willing to go to these public events and speak about what was going on. Her job warned her that they were not so much against her attempt to reform this particular law or system, as the public negative attention that the company Aramco, for which she worked at the time, was receiving, because they too were afraid of negative attention from the West. It is a society that finds any sort of foreign interventionism or interference inappropriate. And so Manal got in trouble, not so much for pushing against the social norms, although that in itself, of course, would lead to some resistance at any point, but because she was breaking cultural taboos in a way that made everybody, even people who supported her or were willing to support her, look bad. And she was willing to do that. She knew that. She acknowledges that in her book. And she acknowledges the fact that her family ends up looking highly problematic. We don't find out until the end of the book, for instance, that her mother, about whom she has a very strongly, she's very strongly affected with her actions throughout the book, that she's been suffering from a severe mental illness that has gone undiagnosed until the end of her life, unfortunately. And I asked myself, as I was reading the book, why she left that important component until the very last pages, when it colored the very way I interpreted her life and her role, because it's one thing to see a horribly abusive, angry person, completely different when a person is not receiving the treatment that they should. As I struggled with these issues reading the book, I noticed something else that made it very very interesting in analyzing her approach to activism, which is She made very broad social statements about the society, and she projected her personal experience on innumerable people without ever citing any sort of data, statistics that could help me as a researcher evaluate the relevance of her anecdotal experience in the context of her claims. As I said, Saudi Arabia is a very closed society. It has been very difficult to get any sort of statistics out of there, but at the same time, it is equally unhelpful to have one prominent figure with a particular agenda to make very general sweeping statements about segments of society. And I asked myself, could it be that her personal issues with what was going on colored the perception of how everyone else was interpreting the very same context? And that question was actually answered in the film by Ferial. So at the same time, she was so there was a lot of anger, but the Saudi society did not react with any sort of response when her book came out. First of all, they didn't want as I understood from interviews that I conducted, they did not want to aggravate the situation and bring additional scrutiny to a private society. At the same time, they felt that she was being disingenuous and quite frankly, many pointed to the contradictions, factual contradictions that she made in her later interviews, such as in New York Times, and I'll be linking to all of that in the paper when I upload it. So there were these factual contradictions that earned her a reputation as someone with a dishonest approach to activism, someone who's willing to engage in character assassination in pursuit of a goal that is otherwise laudable. Trying to bring better rights for women or any other segment of society is not a bad thing, and she seems to be aware of that perception, and yet she seems to still believe that this is the right way to do things. And it's worth noting throughout the book that she is the only voice that we hear from that society. It's her memoir, and she occasionally quotes her relatives or friends, or other people, but we never hear their perspective. The entire story is told through her personal lens, and at no point does she give any indication of having tried to work within the context of the society with the authorities to pressure them in a different way, or to work with the women whom she inspired for these public campaigns that were aimed at foreign audiences, to approach influential individuals who were sympathetic to their causes and actually get them on their side. In fact, she does exactly the opposite. She ends her book. At that point, the driving ban had not been lifted. It is 2016, with a political dig at one of the people who could have actually done exactly what she wanted to. The dig is aimed at the deputy crown prince, who later became the crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, and she basically states that when asked whether he would lift the driving ban if ever in a position to do so, he said, "I don't have an opinion, I will need to research the subject." And she puts it in highly negative terms that kind of build up the audience at the time to expect something bad from this guy, to expect him to be just another unsympathetic official or ruler who is going to be looking for ways not to avoid making a difficult decision. And the reality is she takes his comments out of context. She does not quote his entire statement, nor does she explain why he said what he said in that particular way, and he did not say exactly what she claimed he did. His comments were essentially that, first of all, he's not in a position to make that decision, and second, that if he were in that position, he would consult with the relevant advisors in order to present his decision in a way that would be beneficial to the country and in a way that is appropriate in the cultural context and in the context of the existing laws. That is a very standard formulation in Saudi society that does not mean that you're not going to do what you're promising. It means it has to be done in a way that does not aggravate the public. And sure.
15 minutes.
Okay. So essentially, that colored the way her activism was structured. It was aimed at reputational damage and at the social reputational damage by attacking particular individuals and by drawing negative attention in the West. Now, when I got to Ferial's film, I knew right away that it was going to be a positive film along the lines of the biographies that are aimed to boost somebody's image. And because the film was called An Ode to My Mother, it was obviously very positive from the very start. And when you look at the film, it is positive. It does not go into any negative incidents within the family. And it is actually presented in a very different way. It starts out with the voice of the mother, or rather someone speaking for the mother, introducing herself with traditional Saudi music and in a very artistic way. Throughout the film, the mode of presentation involves introduction of these cultural elements, reading of both pre-Islamic Saudi poems and Ferial's mother, Tahira's own poetry, as well as visual art and that showcases cultural elements of her work. She was a fashion designer, as well as the society and everything around them. In addition, the film engaged a variety of various individuals and interviews from her mother's own circles, as well as from other members of society. It acknowledges that her mother, who was very modern for her time, was a controversial figure who had some pushback against her. She was obviously older than Manal. Her activities took place in 50s, 60s, and so forth. But at the same time, they bear witness, they give evidence to the kind of person Tahira was, and to her ability to handle these challenges within the appropriate cultural context, with sensitivity, without insulting people and without getting into fights and drawing negative attention from outside the country. In essence, she talks about how the city is actually richly diverse, and despite the fact that in the 50s and 60s women were largely uneducated and there were few social opportunities for them, they were still able to advance in society through other means. And many of them were as successful as men in other ways, and were financially successful. She also discussed the society where women were able to succeed in a different way, in a culturally appropriate context of the role they played in society, which Ferial explains was of value, even if other people might not, outside the society, might not think that a traditional role provides as many opportunities for women's choices in life. She explains that this was not the case, and far being it from women being completely downtrodden, they were actually quite diverse and had many opportunities. So, as you can see, completely different approach to activism. It also attracts attention to women's issues and the decisions they have to make, but within this culturally appropriate context that kind of helps to build bridges to the society that is generally seen as negative and controversial. So that's basically the very, very different perspectives.
Thank you.
So I might be misunderstanding your argument about these two memoirs, so forgive me if that's the case. But you seem quite critical of the driving memoir, of Sharif's memoir.
My criticism is not so much of the activism as such, but of the fact that she seemed to have taken liberties with facts without ever really kind of providing evidential basis for her assertions about the wider context outside her own strictly personal experience.
But so I wonder if perhaps, I mean, it's a memoir, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in understanding the dictates of the genre, it seems to me like maybe your criticism holds the genre to unfair standards. Do we expect people who write memoirs to include statistics?
No, I don't mean so much statistics as the fact as she seemed to have wanted a particular message about the society, and as a result of the way she did it, it clearly to me as a reader, it appeared very negative, very monochromatic, very not the opposite of diverse, and it seemed highly kind of depressing, and she seemed to be implying that if her own family experience was negative, then everybody's family experience in the same city she was talking about, specifically about Mecca, was very similar to hers. She was actually making those comments throughout the book. And when I watched Ferial's film afterwards, the implication was that actually that could not be true because the city had, like any city, had very different social strata, very different family basis, and each experience should be evaluated individually because it's so diverse. So that was my issue of the way she achieved her goal. I think activism is positive. I think trying to bring attention to your society is possible. What's negative is when you're engaging in deliberate obfuscation of issues to achieve that goal, and as a result, you alienate potential allies within your own society.
So so I'll say one more thing and then I'll shut up. But I mean, it seems to me like if the question at hand here is how do we represent and talk about activism, that's actually the central tension of activism, right? Like, do you work within the society, or do you create the like burn it all down framework and decide that you can't worry about alienating those potential allies because they're so far away from the society that you envision? I mean, I see that as kind of the debate that's playing out in the United States right now, like the Biden versus Sanders thing. Is like, does it make sense to even talk about allies if those people are never going to agree with the society you envision?
I love your point, and to be honest with you, I actually did not want that question answered by me. I literally wanted to bring it to a point of people struggling with that issue because I think that's exactly what's needed. I think specifically with the discussion to Saudi Arabia, but also in the domestic context, there's been too many attempts to have the narrative defined in only one way, that whoever is sympathetic to it is willing to acknowledge it, whereas in reality there are many diverse ways of being a woman, being an active woman, being a Saudi, being a Westerner, building bridges, or destroying, or burning down structures that you disagree with, as you see. And I want all of that to be on the table, not just something that people tend to have a personal connection to.
Well, I have a question about actually back to what Jenna just said about stylistic choices. I was wondering whether Sharif's memoir, in its narrative voice, actually has a claim to neutrality and objectivity and kind of truthfulness, and compared to potentially a movie, since it is a collaborative work, might also in its narrative voice have more of a kind of claim to universality. So I was just wondering whether you see any stylistic differences also, not just in the way that one seems unfair and the other seems fair, but really just in terms of how they present themselves as either fair or as either very personal or as not so much personal.
So Ferial's film was not neutral by any means. It was very positive, and it from the start acknowledged that it was a tribute, that she viewed her mother as someone to imitate, and she was very open about that. With Manal, she seems to be struggling with defining what it is exactly that she's trying to communicate about herself versus society. On the one hand, she does want to put herself out as someone who's doing positive things, and while criticizing all of these things. On the other hand, I mean, it's not that neutrality is the right word for a memoir. I wouldn't expect anyone writing about themselves to be fully neutral and objective, but is she willing to give voice to perspectives on the events other than herself? That the answer is absolutely not. It's very clear that the way she tells the story is she's in control of the messaging, and she acknowledges only her own perspective on the events, and everything else is the illustration of her point of view. With Ferial, but she does so in a way that she does not define from the start. She does not say, look, this is my perspective. I've talked to people, I disagree with them, with people who have different perspectives. And that's okay. This is how I do things, but there are other voices, and I've interacted with them, and they were not all bad. She does not do that. In fact, I get the sense that she's trying to downplay the people who did, who were supportive, but disagreed with the way she did things. And essentially, as a result, everybody in the book, except a couple of political allies that she had, comes across as very negative, unpleasant people. And I'm starting to wonder, how is it possible that every single person has such huge problems, whereas Manal ends up being a victim in every single situation? And that raises questions for me, which I struggled with, because I am sympathetic to human rights. I myself am active in the area, and in fact, I decided to read this book as a result of my involvement with talking to many women about their own priorities in their rights. I realized that a lot of the Western order dealing with women's rights in Saudi Arabia basically focuses on a few activists, but does not interview the general strata of society, the housewives, the women in different, kind of professions who have their own needs, but who never get asked what they actually want to see happen. So I basically conducted many interviews, and I talked to them about the different changes in society, and some of the comments contrasted widely with what Manal was saying, which made me ask myself, why has she not presented these alternative perspectives at all in any way? Some of her comments were basically factually inaccurate. She was making claims about particular elements of the guardianship system being very active up until 2016 when she wrote the book, whereas upon talking with some other women from the same city or other cities, I found out that those particular elements were not being enforced for whatever reasons for years on end. So these kind of details matter to me, not so much because I'm looking for absolute accuracy based on one individual experience, but because I do want to see that whoever is writing the book is doing so in good faith and is not trying to take advantage of my ignorance as an outsider. And that's the sense that I got from the book. It's not, I wouldn't say that it's not worth reading, it very much is. And a lot of the messaging actually echoed observations by Ferial about some of the difficulties of living in a society where there is poor access to education for both men and women, and pointing out various other problems. But if your aim is to educate the outside public who is not familiar, you are, as an individual activist, in a position either to educate or to make a one-sided kind of propaganda that makes you look good and everybody else look bad. And that's what I got the sense from this memoir, that it was more of a political messaging than an educational or transformative messaging, that it didn't necessarily look for the most constructive way to deal with the issue, because think about it, what did I just say? Saudi Arabia is highly negative to any outside pressure. So what happens as a result of her producing this memoir? Human rights activists in the West get upset, start writing, why is KSA doing X, Y, and Z? Meanwhile, A, things have already been changing at that point. B, there were other people who wanted them to change, weren't sure how to do it in a way that would, cause them problems, and just struggling to figure it out, but they were alienated by this pressure. And C, the authorities immediately took a defensive position at the time when she, her activity started coming out and she started speaking out, and actually kind of dug in, and maybe some of these things could have been dealt with sooner if they were handled differently.
Thank you, Irina. Any other questions? Maybe I could ask one. I was wondering, you're describing that I understood that you're describing that the memoir, the printed memoir, has itself features of character attack or by not also asking permission and such, bridging it.
Sure.
Whereas the film is positive and also in its, let's say, relationality to other persons, or in the way it sets up the relation to the mother is, let's say, on friendly terms.
Sure.
Could this in any way be related to the mediality, in the sense of print being more permissive to vitriolic attacks than if one produces a film? And I would have to ask you, are there live images of the mother, or is she long dead, and is it just by photographs that the mother is included in the documentary? I didn't understand that from the presentation. So could it be, and this reminds me actually of the talk of Jenny's talk, and questions about not just verbal, but also gesture and mimics, the face, the looks, playing a role in how characters come across. And so could it be that we tend to, would we accept such a film like that has the same setup as the book less, or am I making myself clear?
Yes. I actually love the point that you brought up. I partially very strongly agree. So